Recording in progress.
My first time ringing the bell, wasn't that fun? Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome everyone. On behalf of President Ron Brooks, it's my pleasure to say happy July 12th. And now could I have Aiden come up? Aiden Jones?
Have not done education in a long time, so bear with
Can I offer you this? Thank you.
my side. Okay, so first I'd like to, invitation here, give thanks to our past president and our current president. Blessings for good tidings, I guess, and a good year, so thank you. Okay, so as Rotarians, mayoral elections lead us to have peace of mind so we may spread peace in the world, and our own friendships help spread happiness to all we meet. May our health be such that we can help others less blessed, and may our business flourish so that we may spread its benefits to those less fortunate. Congratulations.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. Land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
And now can I ask Tim to come up? Or you can do it from there, Tim, because you've got a bit of a loud voice. It's up to you how you can then introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Madam President, I'm happy to do it. I don't think I need that. All right. Mary Maher, you want to introduce your guest?
I'm with me today, my friend and neighbor, Paul Shaw. Paul moved to the area about 2 years ago. He plays tennis here at the club and a consultant now.
I'm a consultant and I run an investment banking firm for Milwaukee. Nice to meet you.
You're from Long Island.
Welcome, Long.
Thank you, Tim. And now I have just a few announcements. It's actually quite a few. That was an understatement. So first of all, I want to say a big thank you to Renee for our wonderful installation banquet at Prestonwood last week. To just stand up for a second. She took the lead on our snacks for schools. And when I was, several of us were putting snacks in there. There was a car full of snacks. So just want to, I know Rob was involved in that, but thank you, Krista, for making sure that we didn't forget about that, because that was an important project. Thank you very much. And Chris Walker, do you want to come up and talk about golf a little bit?
Sure, why not?
You want to come up here? Come on this side. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as of right now, we have pledged $12,000 to our tournament, which we held when? Come on, I set you notes on it. Last Monday in August. Very good. Hottest day of the year. That's right. It's guaranteed. So that's why we're having you tee off at 10 o'clock. Now, I want everybody to be in on this one. So how many of you have cars? Most of you have cars. Okay, the people that have cars, how many of you have tires on those cars? Yeah, pretty much everybody. That's good. We have got a raffle now for 4 brand new Michelin tires donated by who else? Anthony Blackman, for $10 a raffle ticket. You don't have to play. I've got tickets on there. They're $10 for a ticket or 2 for $20. So I give you a play. So anyway, still need some players. You can sign up online. I sent an email out. Rod sent a link earlier on it. You can even buy your raffle tickets, but the raffle tickets for 4 Michelin, brand new Michelin tires. Even if you got a 315 R50 R21 tire, he'll supply it. It's great. So I got tickets. Give me $20. Give me $10. I give you 2 tickets and hope you win the tires. Thanks.
Thank you. We have some golfers in this group. Some of us can do it. We have some golfers who are great golfers, some who are working to become better golfers. And I know you know who you are. So a couple of other just business announcements. The board approved our action plan, which has 6 key goals, and Rod's going to speak about that later. After he pays fines and fees, which he promises he's willing to do for missing his very first meeting as president. Maybe some hazing there. And we're working to finalize our annual budget, which we're going to complete in August. Invoices for Q1 were sent out today, and the board approved $1,000 to spend towards the Ukraine Aquatabs project. And you can, Leon, is Leon here? Do you want to talk about that? I thought you might. Thank you, Leon.
You're welcome. Hello, everybody. The International Committee, with the suggestion and support of Paul, our secretary, we have identified a project in Ukraine. And the background is that the infrastructure there has largely been destroyed, at least for a portion of the population. And that includes the water distribution system. And the way that that's being dealt with is that because the water is not good, there's a product on the market called Aquatab, and it's an international product. It's used everywhere in the world. It operates a little bit like Alka-Seltzer. You take a glass of water, you drop in a tablet, you wait a half an hour, and it's safe to drink. And so the project is to raise $5,000, of which our club has committed $1,000. And we have asked the other clubs in this around Cary to contribute $1,000 too, to hopefully bring it up to 5,000, maybe more. And this project is working with Rotary in Ukraine. And it would seem, it has to be difficult there for a Rotary club to operate under their circumstances, but they're really stepping up to the plate, and they're going to be dealing and addressing and actually doing the distribution of the Aquatabs to where they need to go. So that's our most recent project. So that's it. And if you see Paul, tell him that he does good work, because you may know that Paul has connections to Ukraine, and it was he who brought this to our attention. So we're much appreciative of that. Thank you. I may have it here. I don't know. I don't see that number of how many. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. What did you put me on the spot?
Thank you, Leon. And I want to talk with you about an opportunity to serve. This is for a specific group. The first question is, do you know if you are approved to volunteer for Wake County Public Schools? So if you know that, then this is something you can do. And it's a very short opportunity. It's the next couple of weeks, this week and next week, to read at beautiful little Rand Road Elementary. They don't even have a principal right now, y'all. They have an interim principal. I talked to the assistant last week or yesterday, And I said, who's your principal? He said, me. I said, who's your assistant principal? He said, me. I said, okay, I get it. And so they have one person running the school until their new principal steps in, which is gonna be soon. And they're running this Read to Achieve camp. Talk to the teacher, and what they're looking for is 2 readers from 11:30 to noon and 2 readers from 3 to 3:30. And that's their time when they can flex things. And they just want a grown up to come and read to them, but you have to already be approved because it takes a little while to get that approval process through. So those of us who are approved, we can get in there. If not, let's get that approval for the next time something like this jumps on our wheelhouse and we can get in there. So if you are already approved, or you think you might be, if you email me or text me, I can check for you, because I can take some shortcuts, is what I do for the next 2 weeks. Anyway, so if you think you might want to do that, this is a really fun thing to do, and you can be around kids. The groups are very small, like 11, 12 kids. It's going to be fun. I know Bob and Rod and Bill are already working on it. I have a little sign up genius. It's just going to be fun. It's just for the next couple of weeks. And then to start our miracle moments, Kristen is going to come and tell us about something. Then we're all going to talk about our miracle moments. All right?
Can I do it here? Too loud?
How loud can it be?
Okay. So
Right.
on your tables, Town Bank is a collection site for the tools for schools. I'm sure you've heard about it on the news. So if y'all want to just bring anything you want to donate here, I will take it after each meeting and then we'll get it to the school. So this is for school supplies that the teachers normally pay for themselves. So just let me know, I'll grab those. And then the second thing is you're going to see cuts and kisses on your table. Those are for you. Those are my COVID compliant thank yous for signing up for all the different jobs and responsibilities. I was a little nervous, nobody was going to sign up, and I was so excited when y'all filled it up. So enjoy your message.
If I could jump on the tools for schools, the average that they say a teacher in a classroom spends of his or her own money, of their own money, is around $500. It's not school money. And so that's worth, that's worth trying to help them out a little bit. Anything you can give them. Teachers use Post-its like crazy. They use highlighters. They use all kinds of markers, dry erase markers, pencils. Anything you give them is going to be helpful. Now, who else has a miracle moment? Okay.
Today, Memory Cafe is having a record attendance. We have 40 guests.
Oh, wow.
Great, we could use a couple volunteers.
Now, what time is that again? Remind us.
Today at 4:30 at the senior center.
Yes. I just wanted you to remind me.
And also, I just want to point out that it's Amazon Prime today and tomorrow. And so any of you that shop, get our Rotary Charity Foundation gets a little piece of what you buy. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Okay, thank you. And now it's my pleasure to ask David Coulter to come up and introduce one of my own personal friends. I'm so glad to see you here, William. Thank you, David.
Thank you, President Camille. So I'm very pleased today to introduce Reverend William Green to the club. He is a native of Durham, North Carolina. And his first trip to Cary was when he played football for Jordan High School. And as a sophomore, he scored his first touchdown against the Cary Imps on October the 6th of 1967. And Cary at that time had only 7,000 people. So you can imagine our growth. He's a graduate of Catawba College, received his master's in divinity from Duke University, and his doctor's of ministry degree from Emory University. He's in his 5th year of retirement after serving 41 years in pastoral ministry. And prior to retiring, he was at First United Methodist Church for 29 years. And while there, he helped the church start a prison ministry. And it was so rewarding that he now serves as the director of the prison ministry development for Cross and Keys Prison Ministry. And that's what he's going to talk about us today. He's married to his best friend and lovely bride, Polly Jo, and she is a media artist, and they make their home in Cary, and they love taking walks with their amazing rescue dog, Gracie Jo. What I thought was fascinating when he sent this material, he said, still in one piece. That's like sincerely, but he said still in one piece. And of course, he spells peace, P-E-A-C-E. So please welcome William Green. Thanks so much.
It's so good to see some familiar faces. Camille, Leon, Kristen, Dr. Charles Mann, Ralph Ashworth, John Hatcher. So good to see some familiar faces. In regards to my first touchdown that I ever scored in high school in 1967, it would be wonderful if I could tell you that it was a 79-yard touchdown run, but it wasn't. It was a dive right play. Quarterback gave me the ball. The hole opened up as big as you could drive a Mack truck through. I froze. Somebody pushed me from behind and I fell over the goal line. 1 yard touchdown. When I first told that at church, First United Methodist Church, several people thought that I made that up. But Dr. Bland was at that game. He was the team physician for the Cary White M's. And my mother saved every program in high school and college for me. And this goes back to October 6, 1967. I opened it up and so many people saw their names in there or children that they knew. And this is really a very precious item for me to keep, my first trip to Cary. You know what? Life is a journey. You never know where it's going to take you. Matter of fact, I have a little folder up here that I keep my notes in, and it says, embrace the journey. And little would I know that one day I would come to Cary in 1989 and have the wonderful opportunity to be in ministry with the people at First United Methodist Church. Embrace the journey is really my motto for retirement. Embrace the journey. But one thing I needed in retirement was a purpose and a calling that I could still give myself to. Because I believe that just because I no longer have a title or a position, I still have a calling. And so I thought about, what is my calling in retirement? And I thought about what was the most rewarding thing that I did when I was in the ministry, and it was prison ministry. I taught disciple Bible study for 12 years at North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women. And I can honestly tell you this, it was one of the most fulfilling things I ever did. And so I thought to myself, I believe that I'll get reconnected with Disciple Bible Outreach Ministries. And I did that in 2019. And I became the director for ministry development with Disciple Bible Outreach Ministries. I started to recruit volunteers to teach disciple in prison. Recruited wonderful volunteers to teach at Orange Correctional Center in Hillsborough, North Carolina. I was just getting started when, guess what happened? The pandemic hit. The pandemic closed all prisons to visitation. It obviously shut down our ministry, and it unfortunately impacted the lives of inmates, correctional officers, chaplains. It impacted the lives of everyone at the correctional facilities throughout North Carolina. There were over 11,000 infections, some 60 deaths. There was a 30% vacancy in staff personnel because of sicknesses and people leaving. There was a 50% vacancy rate among nurses in the prison. And it was a hard time for people in prison. So we got to thinking, is there anything at all that we can do, though we can't go inside the prison at this time? So we came up with two ideas. The first idea was to call all the chaplains, have prayer with them, and ask them, what could we possibly do to support them at this time? And then that's when we came up with this. This is a book. It was published in 2019. Hear My Voice, a prison prayer book put together by inmates, correctional officers, chaplains, by pastors, ministers, and it is a wonderful, wonderful prayer book. And so we sent over 1,000 copies to chaplains to distribute amongst their persons that they serve. We were able to do that. But we had a hidden blessing in this pause called pandemic. We began to ask ourselves, is there anything that we could do better? Is there anything more we can do? And so we thought about that and prayed about that. We had a retreat. We had several times that we got together, and we discovered that there is so much more to do. So Cross and Key Prison Ministries was birthed in July of 2021. And we now have a holistic prison ministry that I want to tell you about. But our mission statement is equipping every church for prison ministry, education on criminal justice issues, and advocacy for prison reform. So it's a holistic approach. We are very, very excited that we have an approach that covers everything. Intervention. What are the things that we can do to intervene to keep people from going into prisons? And we have developed a resource of things that people can do to get involved. Communities and schools is one obvious good way to get involved there. We obviously have ministries inside the prisons, ministries with family members of inmates, and ministries to correctional officers and chaplains themselves. And then one of the most important things, aftercare. When inmates are released, what kind of care and help do they receive on the outside? And then let us not forget the victims of crimes. And so our holistic prison ministry covers that as well. A ministry to those who have been victimized through crime. And then lastly, but so importantly, advocacy. Advocacy for prison reform. You know, what we have looked at is for many, many years, we have been involved in mercy ministries, which is wonderful. It's offering aid and comfort and compassion to those who suffer. But then we also realize that we need justice missions, justice ministries, because we have systems that sometimes need reforming, need to become better. And there needs to be a voice to speak up for reform. And we are issuing that call even now, the sevenfold approach to a holistic prison ministry. That's it, covering all those things. 52 prisons in 42 counties. There are 4 federal prisons in North Carolina in 2 different counties. There are over 30,000 persons incarcerated. If you want to get your arms around that, that would be like the whole town of Sanford, New Bern, or Wake Forest being incarcerated. There are approximately 27,000 males and 3,000 females. One of the most important things, you know, I've been asked about prison ministries is, why should we care? Why should we truly care about what happens within our prisons? The first thing I can tell you is this: 97% of the persons in prison right now will one day ultimately be released back into society. So the question is, how will they be coming out? Will they be coming out any better than how they went in? And then also this statistic on recidivism. 1/2 of the persons released from prison within 3 years return to prison. And so our prisons are constantly being overcrowded, and recidivism is a very, very big problem, and we need to address that. Approximately $40,000 a year is spent on an inmate. It goes up and up and up and up when they have to have closer security, in particular for those who are serving in life sentences and on death row. Well, guess what? There are some people who have family members that have been in prison. As a pastor, even though most church members would not know this, there are church members who are in prison, and they're members of our congregation. That's a reason to care. And then there's a humanitarian reason to care. Fyodor Dostoevsky is credited with this quote, and I love Fyodor Dostoevsky, and it is, the degree of civilization in society is judged by entering its prisons. We should really care. We should really care about what happens to people and how we treat people, those who are marginalized, those who are on the outside. People in prison we cannot even see at this time. And then, of course, all the major religions have at its core teaching care and compassion for those who suffer. All the major religions. And of course, as a Christian, for me, the teaching of Jesus. As you do it to one of the least of these, you do it unto me. And so these are some of the reasons of why we should truly care. Now, what can you do? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Cross and Key Prison Ministries is working on a toolkit for prison ministry. We hope to have that available online, our website, in September. We hope to have a book published that I'm writing along with Mark Hicks, and perhaps in October that will be coming out. But in the toolkit for prison ministry are all the ways that you and your church or your organization can become involved in a holistic prison ministry, ways that you can get involved. But let me just tell you that around here, there are basically three correctional facilities: North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women, there is Wake Correctional Center for men, and then of course there's Central Prison. Now, if you really wanted to do something right now, my suggestion would be, contact the coordinator of volunteer services at the different correctional facilities and ask them, what sort of programs do you have there? What sort of programs do you need there? And you could perhaps maybe join one of those programs, one of those ministries. Now, with the Cross and Key Prison Ministries, we are available to help every single church and every single person find a way that he or she can become involved. Just highlight a couple of quick things. The women at North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women, that is a place that has a wonderful chaplain. Her name is Sarah Jobe. She's also the co-director of the certification program for prison ministry at Duke Divinity School. And there's a website called the Interfaith Prison Ministry for Women. And on that website, Interfaith Prison Ministry for Women, all the wonderful different ways that ordinary citizens can make a difference, from little things to big things. It all mounts up. One of the things that I'm proudest about First United Methodist Church was that when I went to prison, I didn't just say we're having a Bible study. I said we're offering our church. And so in 1999, as we were my first class, as we were going around introducing ourselves and a little bit about ourselves, there was a young lady by the name of Dreamer Alston who said that she just decided to come. She didn't know why she came. All the leaders were male. She says, I don't trust men anymore, and I'm not so sure about the church. And I said, well, it's glad to have you. I'm glad you're here. And she sat as far away from me as she could, and that was okay. But she took disciple 1, disciple 2, disciple 3, disciple 4. And we had people from our church to come visit during times that we could bring other people into prison at Christmas and at graduation in May to provide dinner. So people from our church got to meet the people in the class and they interacted. Several people in the church became volunteers, escort people for community visits, meaning that Dreamer Alston could be brought to church to worship. Dreamer joined the church. She became a Stephen minister. She became involved in the women's ministry. She was beloved, and she was released from early release due to COVID in April of 2020. Now, I was already retired, but I was notified that on the date of her release, the people from First United Methodist Church, mostly the women, were going to go greet her. They were not permitted to physically have contact, and so they all their cars with balloons hanging out the windows, with horns honking. And when she came out, they said, "We love you, Dreamer." Hardly any inmate who is released from prison even has people to greet them, to escort them anywhere, much less a church to say, "We love you." And that's just a picture of what excites me when we say we can offer our church. Well, in the toolkit, I have written the last chapter. It's called A Story of Hope. I'd just like to share it with you briefly. It was a hot and humid day in late spring when evening thunderstorms often arise. I was driving home after a full day of ministry, visiting members in the hospital, attending meetings, and preparing a sermon. It was also the night for me to teach disciple Bible study class at the largest women's prison in North Carolina, which is also the largest prison in North Carolina. Already feeling a bit tired and looking forward to supper when I arrived home, a thought came to me. Maybe I could just let the other facilitators know that I needed to take the night off. But after supper and wrestling with the decision, I decided to go anyway. Sometimes it's all about showing up. Yes, I thought, I can just show up. I arrived at the prison and was waiting at the gatehouse to be escorted in. I heard the distant thunder of a storm brewing. It could really get messy tonight, I muttered under my breath. Eventually, the guard led me to the Bible students. There were 14 women, ages 32 to 52 in our class. The class included whites, blacks, Hispanics. Some had been in prison nearly 20 years, while some had only been there 3 or 4 years. But what I liked most about these women was that over time, as we built trust, they shared openly about their lives, the good and the bad. The lesson that night was about the flood, the big 40 nights. God's good creation was in jeopardy. Wickedness had spread all over the people, and if God didn't do something, it would take over the whole world. But God had a plan. Somehow our discussions that night began to center on feelings of hopelessness for both ourselves and our world. When discussions about sins take place in a prison, they are very much different from discussions in a church. I asked about sins once in the class, needed time to think about it. But the women in our class in prison didn't need time to think about it. They had all experienced brokenness, whether it was the painful result of the actions of others or themselves. The thunder outside grew louder and the rain poured, a perfect backdrop for the study of Noah and the flood. As we drew near the end of our study, we read about how God gave humankind a brand new start. Having been saved in the ark from the flood, Noah and his family walked again on God's green earth. The rain had stopped, the water subsided. Then God gave the very first covenant in the Bible, an unconditional covenant. God set a beautiful rainbow in the sky. It was God's promise to never again send such a flood. Start over, God was saying. I'll create everything new. I asked the women in the class what that rainbow meant to them. And they all agreed and said, that rainbow represents hope. And then they began to express their hopes. Hopes about their life and its meaning and its purpose and their future. And I hope there's something I can look forward to beyond this place, was often uttered. Even though the room we were in had no windows, I could hear the rain outside had stopped. As usual, we closed our study by forming a circle, joining hands and praying. When we were escorted out, we all saw it, a beautiful rainbow. I believe that the one thing we all need, especially persons in prison, is hope. That's why I go to prison. I believe that every time I go to prison, God has yet another beautiful rainbow to show us. And I don't want to miss a single one. That's why I do what I do. I truly believe God does his best work in prisons, and his most beautiful rainbows can be seen there. I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions. And just raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Yes.
I'm curious about receptivity. And so your outreach or any ministry that's going into prison, what's the response like?
You mean among the inmates?
Yeah, so the general population, is this a popular kind of program? Is it difficult to get people to participate?
Well, to speak specifically about teaching disciple Bible study in prison, let me go with that first. The people, we talked with the chaplain that we would like to provide a class. We can accommodate anywhere from up to 16 people in a class. The chaplain will know who are eligible to participate in programs, and they would sign up for it, and they would be approved through the chaplain. So then they would come for an orientation session with us, and we would say, this is our covenant of what it means to belong to this class. And so, you know, at any time you want to leave, that you're free to leave. But to belong to this class, we're going to keep this covenant. And all the ladies always stayed, and they always kept the covenant. And like I said, sometimes they just showed up out of, I don't know what this is about. To some of them were deeply committed Bible students. Now, moving beyond that, can you imagine what it must be like to be in prison? It's the most isolated place there is. Your decisions are taken away from you. You don't decide what clothes to wear, they're given to you. You don't decide when to wake up, they tell you when to wake up. And it's a place to where there's very little freedom. And so when persons have the opportunity to avail themselves of a program or a ministry, they really, really are interested. Some of the programs that are provided in prisons are doing wonderful things. Helping people get their GED is a wonderful thing. There is a program called Women Match, Mothers and Their Children. So many times when a mother is incarcerated, that she loses that valuable relationship with her son or daughter. And the son or daughter loses something very valuable from not having that relationship with the mother. And so very often, the very sons and daughters of mothers who are incarcerated wind up being incarcerated themselves. So there actually is a ministry called Mothers and Their Children, where children are brought to the prison. There's a separate place within the prison fixed up like a home, and the women can have visits with their children, can cook for them, they can be with them for various programs. All the women have to go through a course on parenting skills. They have to be approved for that. And get this, children are escorted from anywhere in North Carolina through funds provided by people. They're provided a place to stay, of course, along with their chaperones. And we have had several testimonies of people say that that was one of the greatest gifts they ever had, was to participate in a program that will enable them to maintain that relationship with their child. The receptivity is very, very, very good. You're going to encounter all kinds of people. And so just don't act shocked. You know, I remember one of the first times the first class that I had, one of the opening icebreakers was, tell me about the first Bible you ever had. And so, you know, I actually had the first Bible I ever had, and I picked it up and we shared. And one lady said, well, I'll tell you what, I was 15 years old. I didn't have a Bible, but I'd go down to Rose's and I saw this big, thick Bible. It was pretty and I'd like to have it. I thought to myself, I believe I'd like to buy it, but I didn't even have enough money. So one day I went in that place and I stole it. And I still got it. It's right here. I said, and you're still reading it too, right? She said, yes, I am. I said, that's wonderful. You know, you meet people where they're at, and they test you. They want to know, do you truly care? Will you continue to show up? So many people have let me down. Are you going to let me down too? I'm going to test you. And so just don't act shocked. Meet the people where they're at. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Be yourself. In the toolkit for prison ministry is a whole chapter on do's and don'ts. You know, what you should do in prison, what you should not do in prison. There's one funny thing about what you should not do in prison. Don't run. But anyway, the receptivity is very good. Coordinators of volunteer services can tell you about all the wonderful things going on in there. So I hope that you'll take the time to get in touch with Cross and Key Prison Ministries if you're interested, or your church. Go on the website sometime around September or October. There'll be a way that you could have the cross and key, the toolkit for prison ministry sent to you online. And hopefully you may find something that will bring a lot of meaning and purpose to your life. Any other questions?
This is not a question, this is kind of a comment. Many, many years ago, when I was in Junior Women's Club, we decided on this project that we would teach quilting
Yes.
to the women in the Women's Correctional Center. And unlike what you said, the most surprising thing to me is when I sat in that class, that didn't look any different from me.
Yes.
It's not a scary thing at all. And it probably is quite different now. Crime is different, people are different, but it was a wonderful ministry.
I was just trying to think, what was that ministry that was so neat? It was the quilting ministry, and it was in North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women. Well, in 1999, when we started there, Hurricane Flood came. Was that Hurricane Floyd? Yeah, and it devastated Eastern North Carolina. Well, the women in the prison had a fundraiser to make things for babies, for kids. And so materials were brought in, people helped them to learn how to do that. They filled the whole gymnasium up with these things that they had quilted, made, crocheted, all kinds of things. And then a big truck came and loaded it all up, took it throughout Eastern North Carolina and distributed it. And all those women were able, here's what they really need. They want to do good and feel good about themselves and what they contribute and the things they can contribute. And so when they learn how to do that and that they could give what their hands made, it was a very valuable experience to them. One other little funny thing, they also took up a very, very large collection and presented it to the governor. And they said, just don't ask us where we got the money from. It was all legitimate. It was all legitimate. Thank you very much.
Doctor, thank you.
Thank you.
Want to thank you for doing what you do. That is a very good thing to do for the church as well as humanity themselves. I have been to prison when we were, I haven't been in prison.
So now,
But as a junior in high school, they actually took our class to the state prison where I was growing up. And I'll never forget that. And the prisoners did a little show for us, or a little presentation on what it was like to be in prison. And it's one of those things that you never want to experience, I know, because of what you're saying. But thank you for being our guest speaker today. I'd like to present you as a token of our appreciation with some note cards from Jerry Miller. I'm sure you know Jerry.
Yes, I do. Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
thank you, Reverend Green William, for that wonderful, inspiring talk. I did need to build time in because I've heard him talk and I know he's got a lot to say. So also want to thank Renee for being our greeter, and I want to thank Aiden for that lovely invocation and for leading the pledge, and Tim for introducing our guests and for our guests for today, and Paul for making sure that our speaker received the cards. And I don't know if you've had Jerry's cards before. They're nice, aren't they?
They are. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
And so I want to tell you all that next week's program is David Sheldon, who's the CEO of Soils Institute. And next week's meal is, I know that matters, so I'll make sure I check, is meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. And we all like green beans, so you know that's going to be important to us. And in 2 weeks, our program is Lisa Brusco, who's with Wheels for Hope. So that's going to be exciting. And so Reverend Green, thank you again so much. So much. Want to thank our visiting guests, Paul and Miss Fox, for coming with us, being with us today. And 4-way test is Billy is who's Kristen? It's gonna be Kristen. And so I want to ask Kristen to come and lead our 4-way test. Will be beneficial to all concerned.